Welcome to Native Talk Arizona, Native Health's Native American Cultural Affairs program, presented by Native Health and KRDP 90.7 FM. I'm Susan Levy. And Chef Nephi Craig is the executive chef of Cafe Gozo in White River, Arizona, on the White Mountain Apache Tribe Reservation. His work has been recognized in national and international publications such as Newsweek, Forbes, Food and Wine, and The Guardian. And his new memoir, Our Knives Will Save Us, Dispatches from a White Mountain Apache Chef, is amazing. I've started reading it, and I'm enthralled by it. Hello, Chef Craig, and welcome to Native Talk Arizona.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited. All right, before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, including being a well-known chef and now a renowned author.
well, I was born and raised on the White Mountain Apache Tribe in northeastern Arizona and on the Navajo Nation. I got into cooking kind of almost by accident. Kind of had no choice, but prior to that, I'd been cooking as a kid. So it was always an interest of mine. I didn't plan on it being my career. But it just kind of ended up being that way as I delved into the stories and the histories around Native foods. I started out getting classically trained in Scottsdale culinary, at a Scottsdale culinary program, and was studying classical French cuisine. And along the way, it kind of just felt like the natural questions I had about Native foods needed to be answered because people around me just didn't know. Professional chefs and other line cooks and people in my orbit didn't seem to know about Native American cooking and cuisine, and or even think it was a legitimate practice in professional kitchens. So that made me want to pursue it even more, and that youthful curiosity just transformed into this journey that I do my best to capture in Our Knives Will Save Us.
What an amazing story. So I know I was reading, I was reading one of your interviews in, oh my gosh, I've read a bunch of stuff recently about everything you've been doing, but I guess I'll back up. Let's talk about your journey as a chef. So you talked about going to school in Scottsdale and then cooking what you cook and what you've learned. How do you see your future in cooking? Do you think you're going to still be a chef and cook, or do you think you're going to go more of the route of writing?
Oh gosh, I'd really love to continue cooking. It's my passion all my life. I love to train people and teams and watch others grow through the practice of cooking. And I also have come to really enjoy and love writing and capturing voice and painting pictures with words. Because in my mind, it's very similar to food and cooking, and how when you know the techniques and stories and histories, you can capture that for a brief moment in time and put it on a plate and revitalize culture and also provide a form of edible education. So I definitely hope that I'm able to do both. I started out with a memoir because I felt like I wanted it to capture a contemporary Native voice and experience with recovery, professional cooking, and all of these themes of that challenge us in everyday Native life. So I really hope I can do both. I plan to do both.
All right. So tell me, okay, so the cafe that you run at White River, tell us something about that.
Well, Cafe Gozo is a part of the Rainbow Treatment Center. It's inside the Nutritional Recovery Program, and I'm the Nutritional Recovery Program Coordinator and Executive Chef. Rainbow Treatment Center has about 16 or 17 different programs that reaches our community, from parenting, vocational, clinical services, and one of those is nutritional recovery. And so Cafe Gozo is inside an old converted gas station. It's on the north side of White River, and it seats about 30 people comfortably. We do cafe service in the morning, which is pastries, coffee, fruits, corn mush, coffee, great coffee, by the way. And we serve lunch only from 11 till 3 p.m., and we're open Monday through Friday. And it's a busy little kitchen. We're always packed, and there's always people out hanging out and in line to come and visit and try the food. A lot of locals, so it's been busy from the beginning, and it's exciting to see where we're going to go as a team.
So what do people in recovery, or do you teach there, or do you just not just cook, or do you cook and then use it as a restaurant? How does that work?
Yeah, on an everyday basis, it's a cafe that's open to the public. But one dimension and one of our clinical priorities is to offer vocational training. So we have our core full-time staff that operates on a daily basis, and then we also provide psychoeducational classes, cooking classes, and we have individuals that are in outpatient services that come in and can gain job experience working with our professional team and reconnecting with native foods as a part of their support system. So it's multidimensional and very exciting.
Wow. Okay, so I got to tell you, what is the most popular dish at the restaurant?
Oh gosh, well, our menu changes. Our menu changes frequently. We just switched over from spring, early summer to summer, and again, we're going to change here in another month or so into our fall menu. I think one of our popular sellers is definitely our Apache Power Bowl. It's a mix of quinoa, heirloom beans, red chili braised beef, and it has our one of our typical favorite community breads is our Western Apache racket bread. And we also have a staple dish that's our Three Sisters salad, and it changes all the time because corn, beans, and squash are very versatile and nutritious, and it's an indigenous planting technique. So we keep that on our menu, and it switches up all the time. So right now for the summer, we have the Three Sisters salad with some salmon croquettes and grilled salmon as well, and baby squash. It's delicious.
Wow. I can only imagine. All right. So I want to ask you, so what is your favorite indigenous dish to prepare? Like just your personal favorite, like something you'd want to make at home for you and your family?
Oh well, I really like to cook outside on a fire, and when I have the opportunity to do that, I like to make acorn stew. I write about it a little bit in our book about some of the history and story and our connections to it. And it's one of those dishes that kind of really truly represents White River or the White Mount Apache tribe, I feel. I feel like in all the discussions and conversations I've had, doing my best to learn about my cultural cuisine, that's one of the dishes that no matter how far a tribal member may travel in the world or whatever pursuit in life they may be after, when they think of home, most of us always will say Apache acorn stew with the racket bread. So that's my favorite.
Okay, so what is in the stew and how do you make the bread?
Oh, it's a very simple grandma style dish, and I think that's why we love it so much. It's just roasted bones, some beef that's simmered for hours until it's tender, and then some of the acorn flour is stirred in, and it can be served with either big chunks of like zucchini or yellow squash that are cooked to be really tender. And a lot of times people will make dumplings, like either flour or corn dumplings, and just tear them into the soup. I think total cooking time could be anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, depending on how soft you want it. But it's always finished with more acorn flour. It's really, really tasty. I like mine with extra chilies in there.
So you like spicy.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, and then the bread that you were talking about, it's called racket bread?
Yeah, it's one of our community favorites. It has many aliases, I say. The easy way to describe it is Western Apache racket bread because it's cooked on a tool that looks like a tennis racket. It has a long metal handle and a steel ring or a circle that has wires or steel grates in it, so it looks like a handheld grill. And the dough is just a simple soft dough of flour, baking powder, salt, and that racket is placed right directly on white hot coals of either oak or juniper or cedar, and that the bread is placed right on top of that. So it puffs up really quick, it gets full of bubbles, and it's real smoky and goes with just about anything. It's known as Western Apache racket bread. It's known as bundetane in Apache. People call it donkey bread, outside bread, bubble bread. So it's got all these neat names. It's really cool. Everyone loves it.
Wow. You paint such a picture. That's obviously why you were such a good writer, because you definitely have a way with words. So,
Thanks.
all right. So I want to jump to your new book, your new memoir, Our Knives Will Save Us, Dispatches from a White Mountain Apache Chef. Tell us a little bit about the book.
I decided to go. This is my first book, and I decided to go the route of writing a memoir slash big idea book. In my journey, I've come to understand that indigenous foods of the America have really changed the world in really, really important ways. And a lot of that history and story is left out of most culinary curriculum, and even academia is just barely beginning to reclaim and tell these stories. So over the years, I've had opportunities to do a cookbook, but I never really quite felt ready. So now I wanted to do this story that not only just tells the ingredients of a dish, but ingredients of a chef, so to speak. Because my experience as I write in the book is it's a very human journey because it involves addiction and recovery. It involves the ups and downs of a young person from the res that is striving for something, I guess, greater than myself, something bigger that's very daunting. And I was able to travel around the world before I was 28 years old, and seeing this international intrigue on native culture and native foods was very validating. And there was a moment in time where I felt like, what am I doing out here in the world? I should try to educate the world. I want to bring this information home and educate myself and my family at home, because we as Native people can benefit the most from this ancestral knowledge that's just packed into the food. So I wanted to capture that and include my story to my journey to sobriety, because it's such a common theme that is often pushed to the side or discounted or misunderstood. So I wanted to let people know that recovery is possible, that it is a process, and there's a phrase that we use quite often. It's only you can do it, but you can't do it alone. And oftentimes, when I say I can't do it, only you can do it, but you can't do it alone, sometimes the native foods were there as support. And a majority of the time, they kept propelling me towards goals to stay sober. So I really wanted it to be a tool for those that are in recovery or starting out their lives, or that are deep in their journey, to hopefully allow us to feel seen and heard and validated for our contemporary Native experiences. And I hope it resonates and touches people, and I hope it really reaches far and wide.
So I know you just mentioned that you want the book to resonate with people, and you've already received accolades from Apple as the book to read this summer. And then also the New York Times has mentioned this is the book that everyone will be reading this summer. Tell us about those mentions. I mean, I think those are tremendous for a writer to get those right out of the gate and so early on. What an honor.
Yeah, it definitely caught me by surprise. I think the first mention was the New York Times books to read this summer, and that came out, and I just woke up one morning and checked my phone, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I started getting these texts, and that began this snowball effect. But also, it also was chosen by Apple Books as their book of July, books to read for July, and then also the audio book, because I also read the audio book. So you can hear me telling the story with my voice as well. So it was pretty neat. And then there's also other mentions out there, and it's making its rounds throughout the literary world, which is really humbling and gratifying, because again, like I was saying, native foods change the world, and I'd like the world to be able to hear these stories that are packed within our land, from our landscapes, and that are packed in the food.
I think that you reading the audiobook, I did not know that you did that. Sorry, I didn't catch that in any of the readings that I did. I think that's amazing, because when I often listen to audiobooks, they don't fit as well. And I think you telling your story, you have such passion, and it's your life. And I think that's just going to resonate with the listeners. And so that's amazing. Now I'm going to have to download the audiobook. I want to back up a little bit. So I was reading in one of the interviews that you did that you were interested in food from an early age, and they were talking about with like the sumac berries and the Apache acorns that you brought home Ziploc bags of berries to your mom. Is that one of your first memories of foods?
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot. Like, what are my early memories with food? And And as Native people, we kind of just grow up around it, and we learn kind of by osmosis. I think, you know what I mean. It's just a part of everyday life. And so the Chunkuze, how we say it in Apache and in Navajo, is chin. It's the edible sumac that grows in the Southwest and is really tart. And we use it in Apache land to grind it up and make a drink with it. That's very common. But it wasn't until much later that you really begin to realize how unique that is. Where it kind of goes into the world of like foraging and ethnobotany and botany, and you're like, oh wow, well that's just what we do as natives, you know what I mean? So capturing those memories and talking about some of those early childhood flavors was important to me, because I know it's very common among almost all my community members and Native peoples in the Southwest. So that's one thing I wanted to identify and reach people with as well.
So which do you use? Do you use sumac very often?
It's very seasonal. It's a summertime plant. It's a perennial. It grows year round. I mean, not year round, but it comes back every year. So last year was very dry, and the previous year was very dry. So we didn't get as much as we wanted to. This year, our monsoons are picking up, so hopefully we get to see more growing. So we haven't gone out to get some yet, but we're waiting on this rain that has been dropping on us here in northeastern Arizona to push it forward a little bit more. So yeah, we're excited about it.
And then what other plants or plants do you forage for up there, or do you gather and use?
We're very fortunate that the White Mountain Apache tribe is situated on one of the most calorie-rich landscapes in all of Arizona and the American Southwest. So our highest peak is 11,000 feet at Mount Baldy, and the lowest borders of our res is down about 2,000 feet in the Salt River Canyon. So we've got desert flora and fauna all the way up to high mountain mixed conifer stands. So some of the things that we like to gather that are important to us are like the acorns, the chunkuze or the sumac, wild tea. There's about 3 or 4 different types of wild greens that everyone calls wild spinach. It's like purslane, lamb's quarters, and wild amaranth. Then there's also, up in the high mountains, there's berries and other ingredients. There's like oxalis that tastes like sour Granny Smith apples. So it just depends on what time of the year. And what I like to add on to that is that this is an example of ancestral intelligence. The foodways that we're working to revitalize, that's just an everyday life, or the foodways we're working to revitalize was just a part of everyday life for our ancestors. So say a 12, 13-year-old kid might have the botanical knowledge of a, master's level botanist, you know what I mean? Because they're following the foods in this calculated relationship with landscape. And that, I feel, is very important to reconnect with for us as Native peoples.
Do you do a lot of education? I know that you said through the Rainbow Treatment Center you're doing a lot of education, but what about with the community and the youth? Are they interested in learning about this? And do you work with them, or do they have programs up at White Mountain to kind of educate and teach them, what these things are, how the sumac grows, how you harvest it, or how does that work?
Yeah, I hope to be one of the voices that contribute to revitalizing this food knowledge. I'm not the only voice. There are many community members and gardeners and farmers in our Apache land that have expert knowledge and more knowledge than I do around Apache culture and traditions, because aside from just the culinary use, there is also the cultural, historical, ceremonial uses of some foods, and community members have that as well. And so in White River, there's outreach programs, and there's the farm in White River. There's different people that are practicing this and using their voices through social media to amplify it. So we do work with youth when we have the opportunity. We do outreach and prevention. We'll do cooking demonstrations. We've been invited to the elementary schools and high schools on our res. And we always do our best to teach with enthusiasm and allow young people to, number one, be seen and feel heard and see that these native foods are very, very special and that they're within our reach.
Well, and I can't think of a better way for a student or young person to learn from somebody like you. I mean, just a world-renowned chef and now an acclaimed author. I mean, I would be honored, or just, I don't know what the word would even be, to just listen to you and hear you and watch you cook. I don't know. Very impressive to me. So, all right, I'm going to bounce back to the book for a second. So one of the reviews for the book said, mentions that you were taught food separated people by nationality and class by gourmand discernment. But in your community, you saw it, that it drew people together. And even when it was hard to come by, food was something that was meant to be shared. So you've talked a little bit about this. Is there anything you want to add about recovery, resiliency, and the people in the community you love?
I feel the notion that food separates people was something I encountered early on in culinary school, because in culinary school they kind of teach you some of the overview history about cuisines of Europe, and they talk about like the caste system, different classes, peasants to royalty, to different levels of society. And in the Native community, from my experience growing up on the res as a kid, food was something that drew us all together. If we had a big birthday party, everybody brought something, and it was a big celebration. Even when there was limited food, it was still something that we shared. Or if you go to someone's house, they offered you food, you should never, turn it down, and be grateful and enjoy with them. And so I feel like that element of togetherness that comes through food across cultures is one of the ways that we can recover from colonialism and the process of colonization that kind of has separated us or detached us from our relationship with land, food, and even our families at sometimes. Because when we share and cook together, it's very equalizing. It kind of disarms us and sets the stage for conversations around family history and relationship building. And relationship building is one of the first steps in recovery from any type of wound. So it's a very powerful way, I feel, to reconnect and revitalize and create new traditions of wellness.
So true. Very well said, too. So what do you want people to take away from your book? Is there anything in particular, or is it everything you've just mentioned or everything you've talked about in the interview?
Well, I hope that people take away from the book that recovery is possible, and don't give up. You don't know who is rooting for you in the background. You don't know who's watching. And then I also always say, or I'd like people to take away that the fear of change feels very daunting. The fear of the unknown is actually nothing compared to what's on the other side once you walk through your fear of change and you practice courage. And as you're living out your recovery, whether it's from drugs and alcohol or not, it could be from recovery from a divorce, it could be recovery from incarceration, it could be recovery from learning to manage diabetes, it could be recovery from trauma. The fear of change is absolutely nothing to the transformational power of walking through and building your life again. So don't give up. It's definitely possible. It's not easy, but it's worth every minute of it, and your recovery is going to be the greatest gift to your family and your community.
We'll continue our interview with Chef Craig after this short break. Support for KRDP 90.7 FM comes in part from Native Health, with 2 locations in Phoenix, 4041 North Central Avenue, Building C, near the corner of Central Avenue and Indian School Road, and at 8800 North 22nd Avenue. Native Health is also located in Mesa at 777 West Southern Avenue, near the corner of Southern Avenue and Extension Road. And Native Health provides primary medical services at the new Guadalupe Health Center, 6725 South Priest Drive in Guadalupe. Native Health provides primary medical, dental, behavioral health, WIC, and wellness services for the urban Native American community. For more information, call 602-279-5262 or visit our webpage at nativehealthphoenix.org. Native Talk Arizona returns after this song. You are listening to Spirit Horses by Annie Humphrey.
creatures young and grown, called by mighty drumming of sacred hooves on stone. The sound of spirit horses dancing on a storm. Mercy for the people, old ways, new dreams reborn. Find us, spirit horses, and teach us.
You are just the most eloquent, I don't know, speaker, writer. But I wanted to find out, how long did it take you to write this book? Was this like, did you just sit down one day and say, I'm going to write this book, and the words just flowed and it took a month? Or does it take a couple years and you have to go back and do you let it sit? Do you write and then do you let it sit and go back a month or two later, or a week later, and edit it? Or how does the process work for you?
Oh, the process was definitely very, it took me about 3 years to complete the process. I had changing editors and some co-writing support, and moving through this, I really learned that I have a lot to learn about writing and prose and creating scenes and language, because the way I think is not the way I should write, so to speak. So going through it, I would do my everyday full-time job at the treatment center and the cafe, and then after work, I would come home and I would write. Or if I'm traveling to do workshops or training sessions, I would write on the plane or write in a hotel, and I would sit and let it digest. I'd send it off to my editing teams, and it would come back, and we just revise and revise. And it took about 3 years to get to the manuscript. And as it was going on, it was surreal because it didn't feel like I was creating a book. To me, I was just putting down pieces of my life that I wanted to pair with understanding native foods. And then I was putting down scenes that I wanted to pair with understanding native foods and recovery from colonialism and addiction. So it was very difficult. I had to really dig deep, and it was odd sometimes to see yourself as a character. Like reading the book and revising the manuscript, I'm reading it and I'm thinking, come on, Nephi, get it, man, get it. You know what I mean? Like seeing myself as a character was kind of strange. And I was rooting for myself, and I was also trying to be kind to myself, because as a writer or a storyteller, you're traveling in that space where no one else goes. You're traveling in your mind, you're traveling in your spirit and your memories, and it's very difficult to be kind to yourself in your memories when you look back. So it taught me a lot about who I was then as a young kid. It also really reaffirmed my own interpretation of Native spirituality, that there are forces guiding and working with us as we live our lives. So man, it was a really unique experience, and to see the final galley and then the final book is just like, wow, like it just blows my mind. And to see the cover art, I put our Apache colors on there and the 4 equilateral crosses. And so now it's here and it's real, and people get to see it, and I'm very honored, and I hope that they like it.
I like it. I mean, I'm sure your listeners will like it, and obviously the New York Times and Apple loved it. When you started writing the book, you were talking about the different chapters of your life. Do you sit down and with your editor, or I don't know a lot about the publishing process, but do you sit down and do you say like different chapters and then you write off that, or do you just sit down and you just write and then they kind of dissect it and put them or compartmentalize it and make chapters out of it? Or is there not even a process? Do you just write?
Well, I knew right from the get-go that, see, like for me in my journey to recovery, I relapsed so many times as a young person that any time I got sober, I knew that everyone around me didn't believe that I could stay sober. So when it finally stuck and I wanted recovery to be real for me, I decided that I'm not going to speak about it publicly too much for 5 years. And then once I hit 5 years, I was like, okay, well, I'm here. I'm going to keep going. And so I didn't really speak about sobriety publicly too much until I hit 10 years sober. And then So by the time I got to this opportunity to write the book, I knew that the story of survivance, going from survival mode to survivance, was the most important part of that was the journey and the tool. The journey as a tool is what I wanted to capture. I felt like doing a cookbook would be okay and fun and glossy and neat, but I wanted to really write this story in a way that our Native community it resonates with our Native community, that we feel seen and validated, and that there's someone out there just like them going through similar things. So capturing that and turning it into a narrative was the challenge. And I knew all of these benchmarks along the way, so I threw out all these moments and started to write and create this narrative of the journey that goes. So it's like three parallel stories, if you want to look at it like that. There's my journey to becoming a chef as a young kid, and then there's the journey of understanding and learning about Native foods as a chef and a person. Then there's my journey to sobriety. So all three of these have this complicated interplay that had to flow and be real. I didn't want to glamorize addiction. I didn't want to romanticize Native culture. I didn't want to focus on the aspects of poverty and oppression, but I wanted to confront the themes of colonization and recovery from that, so that as Native people, we have something to work with and something to build on, because we can have all of the elements, resources in place, but if our own hearts and minds are not in order, we're going to struggle more. So my thinking was I wanted to have a story of recovery as a tool for those that need it and those that are ready for it.
What a great story. So when you wrote it and you had to put the three parts in all the time, did you have a hard time doing that, or did the editors, do you write and then do you give like each chapter to the editors? And then did they come back and say, you know what, this third isn't strong enough? Or do they just kind of do the grammar? I don't know. How did that work?
It was definitely both, because I actually had to cut out a lot of information in the journey, because in this book there's growing up on the Apache res and the Navajo Nation. There's brief talk about my grandfather, who's a Navajo code talker, my father, the singer and songwriter Vincent Craig, and then there's Japan and samurais, and then professional cooking. You know what I mean? There's all of these interesting components of American history that our lives are touched by as Native people. So I wanted to delve more into my mother's side and my father's side, and more into the professional cooking side. So we really actually pared it down to make them flow and be consistent. So it wasn't really, it was difficult, but I guess the difficult part was choosing what got cut and how to make the story flow so that the reader stays engaged. That was a challenge.
Did they let you pick, or did they pick that?
Oh, no, well, it was collaborative. I really wanted it to be clear that I want this to be a collaborative project. I want it to be a narrative, but I also need to make sure that these elements, everything that's in the book, is what I wanted to be in there specifically, because the story of recovery and the journey to sobriety cannot happen with some of these components that I talk about. And I wrote about a lot of my challenges and failures, because that's where a lot of the most powerful lessons for me reside. There's lessons that we learn from successes, but also the most transformational changes came from failing over and over and over again, and then not giving up. So that's why this narrative we crafted and put together is I hope it's very human. I hope it's relatable. I hope that people see themselves in it or see a family member in it and are inspired to not give up and to keep going. So that was how I was thinking about that.
What a journey you've had. And I guess, I don't know if the correct way is to say congratulations on your sobriety or whatever, but that's an amazing journey that you've had. I want to ask you, you mentioned briefly a few minutes ago about the cover. I love the cover. I love the color. I love the font. Did you pick this? Or was this something the editors came up with? I just think it is. It's eye-catching. It's appealing. It's interesting. It's engaging. I don't know. Tell us a little bit about
it
the
was
cover of the book.
the cover was very collaborative. We had a couple of other drafts that had like a chef knife and a feather and some native designs, and I said, well, that's cool, but I want something that will catch people's eye, and I also want images of the cultivars, some of the indigenous cultivars on the cover. So I even sketched out some designs based on some old school cookbooks that I like. Wrote down a bunch of different things, and so as we went through these renditions, when this one came back, I was like, wow, this one is cool. At first, I was like, what is that? You know what I mean? Then I had to look at it. I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. Like, it's a silhouette of my face. And inside that is pictures that I took. The corn in there is from Apache land, the farm there. The acorns are acorns that I sent off to be photographed. And so my photographs and some of my favorite indigenous foods are on that cover. And then the title, Our Knives Will Save Us, is kind of the theme that kind of runs through this for me as a cook and a chef, because no matter how dark it got, I always felt like if I have my chef knives, I'll be able to survive somewhere in the world. You know what I mean? So, and then the last thing I wanted on the art was those equilateral crosses on the front cover above my nave, and then I also really wanted it on the spine so that anyone that's native is walking through a bookshelf and they see that, they'll stop and think, whoa. And if they're White Mountain Apache, they'll be like, that's White Mountain Apache colors. Because inside those colors is a whole other narrative and story about our creation story and our values and all that stuff. So it was really neat to see it, and I'm happy about it. And it just kind of came back. The last kind of really neat piece of this was the color. My clan in Apache, my mom's clan, is Bichun, and that comes from Sibiku, way out on the western end of the res, and it translates to they paint their moccasins yellow, or painted yellow people. And so I was like, wow, man. So it just kind of all came together in a real beautiful way, and I'm very happy with it.
I think it's gorgeous. I mean, I love it. Great choices. So now that you've done one book, do you think you're going to do, I know you've talked about the cookbook a couple times or thinking about it. Do you think you would do either a cookbook or a second book or a second memoir or a new chapter? Any thoughts for writing another book?
Yeah, I definitely love to take on the process. I want to sit with this one. It's my first baby, so I'm going to let it grow and see how strong it does and what becomes from it. There's so much layered into this first book that there's room for other dimensions of it. I would love to do a cookbook. I'd also love to do a youth cookbook as well. Something neat that can, something that makes these stories come to life through food would be so fun, so awesome.
So if you did a youth cookbook, because I don't know if there's very many out there, very many indigenous youth cookbooks, what would you do? I mean, have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, I've thought about it for many, many years. I would love to do just like classic res favorites, techniques and stories and humor attached to that. But I also would love to do some technical dishes that are like spin-offs of these res classics, and then also some really nice instructions on how to use a knife, how to work with fire, and how to be safe in a kitchen, and tie those to values that are cultural. You know what I mean? That's what I think would be so cool, and have real cool art too.
So that might be your next project, right? Maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? We're gonna see. Gonna see how this book rolls out, and we're only in week 3 right now, 2.5 weeks since the release, so we're just at the beginning.
Let me tell you, I mean, the buzz around your book is, I think, amazing. I mean, we have authors on, and we've been doing this for a while, but I would say yours is one of the top ones that I've seen that this much written this early on in the buzz about it. I mean, what a compliment to you and to your book and to your writing and to your cooking, and just what an amazing journey. I know that when you were talking, so you've mentioned your knives a couple times. Knives I watch a lot of cooking shows, and I'm really enjoy that. Knives are really expensive, correct? The knives that you all get, those stay with you your entire career. Is that correct?
Yeah, they can. A good quality knife. A knife doesn't have to be a super high end Japanese steel or German steel knife. Any good knife that is a sharp knife will do. But when you invest in a good knife, that could be a professional style, it will last many, many, many years. I still have a knife that I write about in the book with me from Japan, and it just depends on how you treat it. I also say, like, if you're going to buy an $800 iPhone or $1,000 iPhone, you could buy 3 quality knives or 4 quality knives for that same price, maybe even 5 that would last 5, 10, 15 years. So it's a very important investment, and learning how to use a knife is just like learning to ride a bike. You're never going to forget, and you get to pass it on. So it's a pretty neat thing.
And I know you also, I watch a lot of chefs on television, how they really take care of their knives. They put them in, I don't know, like they roll them up and they really, or cases, I don't know what they're called. But, and that's all in how you take care of the knives, right? And sharpen them and just treat them with respect and very carefully and take care of them.
Yeah, definitely. They're definitely the tools of our trade, not just as professional cooks, but also in our homes. Treating them with care and respect and finding a special place for them is very important. And we also say in kitchens that how you treat your knife or how you treat your station is a reflection of who you are and your character. So if you're careless with your knife, it can be dangerous. If you're careful and respectful of your knife, it's very disciplined and respectful as well. So just learning to build that habit in can cultivate these other values in the kitchen at home or on your station at work.
I had never heard that before, and that absolutely makes sense. I do want to ask, if you were to give a parent some advice for some children, like if they had kids at home, and do you think it's a good idea to start children, like when they're preschoolers, into working in the kitchen with the parents, trying, using some of the indigenous foods and trying them and explaining them? Do you think there's an optimal age and a way to start with children in the kitchen? Sorry, that was not one of the questions I had sent you, but just kind of curious.
No. It's a very, very important question because introducing native foods or reintroducing native foods can start as soon as, at birth. It can even start for mothers in what they choose to eat while baby's in the womb. And so for the act of cooking, it's every child's going to be different, but finding age appropriate tasks, we know our children better than anyone else. So letting them use a peeler, or they even sell these little vegetable knives for kids. Anything that's age appropriate and safe I would say is totally fine. But also safety is the first priority in any kitchen. But this is a skill that will last for the rest of their lives. Cooking and learning food choices and identifying foods is what we call expanding food vocabulary. And it's just like any other health practice. If you have more options, if you have more choices to make around healthcare options, you're probably going to have a higher chance of long-term health. And the same thing is true with foods. If you can identify more foods and you know what they taste like, or you know how to prepare some of these foods, your chances of better health outcomes is higher in the long term. So it's a very important thing. And what's neat about cooking with our kids is that it causes us to slow down as parents. And sometimes that's exactly what we need. After work, to just relax, turn off the TV, put down the phone, and start cooking. Let them pick herbs, let them watch, let them taste. And most importantly, you season your food with smiles and enthusiasm, because it's a really tender moment to be at that age. Because those of us that have parents that have grown, those of us that are parents that where our kids have grown up, we know that time goes fast. And so taking those moments to build in some life skills when they're small is so meaningful. It's going to be meaningful in the moment, and it's going to be meaningful when we grow up and we remember it as kids, as adults, I mean.
Wow. All right. So in looking at your future, Do you think you're still thinking you're going to be running, your the programs at the Rainbow Treatment Center, and you're still going to be a chef? Any plan? Like, do you see yourself still doing that in 5 years, or have you thought about it? Or I don't know. Not a good question.
One of a phrase I tell myself all the time is eyes focus forward and feet on the ground. So I'm going to take it moment by moment, day by day. This clinical work that I do, aside from being a chef, I'm also a behavioral health technician and an advanced certified relapse prevention specialist. And I really value learning and developing my clinical style, integrating motivational interviewing, concepts of cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. I realized when coming to the treatment center that I'm just as excited about the cooking and foods as I am about the clinical side of the work, because in my journey to sobriety, I always ask myself, why can I not get this? Why do I keep relapsing? And then so now that living in sobriety, I have a sense of clarity that I try to communicate the best I can to people that are in their early recovery phases. That's what I hope to continue to keep doing, is developing my clinical style and developing more works around native foods and recovery and hands-on training and all these wonderful things that we do now.
Wow, what an amazing human you are, and making such a difference for so many people. All right, so we're pretty much out of time, but I wanted to find out, can you tell our listeners how they can find more information about you, your work, your amazing cooking, the cafe, the Rainbow Treatment Center, and now most recently your amazing book, wonderful book, Our Knives Will Save Us, Dispatches from a White Mountain Apache Chef, and how can they contact you? That's a lot. I don't know if you have one place or where you can direct people to reach out to you.
Well, the Rainbow Treatment Center is in White River, Arizona, on the White Mountain Apache tribe. We have a website. It's really easy to find. Just Google Google Rainbow Treatment Center. And then Cafe Gojo is in White River. We're open Monday through Friday, 7 to 3 every day, and we do special dinners occasionally. You can follow us on our social media, our Cafe Gojo Facebook and Instagram. And then you can reach me through Instagram at Nephi_Craig. And then finally, for purchasing Our Knives Will Save Us, it's in a multitude of platforms. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it in a Barnes & Noble in your store. And also supporting local independent bookstores is important. So try to find it out there. And then when you do, if you happen to enjoy, leave a review on the Amazon link so that it can boost the algorithm and get more visible, because the stories and the narrative that we crafted is one that I feel is important to all cultures. And so again, Our Knives Will Save Us is available through Penguin Press.
You know what? I have enjoyed this so much. I've learned a lot. I am impressed, thoughtful, thought-provoking, and I just want to say I've really enjoyed it, and I appreciate you taking time to come on and tell us about what you've been doing, what you're doing now, and what you're going to be doing. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and I hope you all enjoyed it out there in Indian country. Take care and keep the knives sharp.
Thank you for listening to Native Talk Arizona, presented by Native Health and 90.7 FM KRDP. Our executive producer is Susan Levy. Sound engineer is Javier Quiroga. We hope you will tune in again next week. If you have any questions, please reach us at nativetalkaz@listen2krdp.com.